Hello, my name is Nick, and welcome to our video on functions in Python. This video is part of our Introduction to Python series. To make the content in this video more accessible, click the Close Captions button or adjust the playback speed. In this video, we will go over how to use functions in Python, which will span the following topics: how to define and use user-defined functions in our Python programs, returning values from functions, and function parameters. Let's get started. Today, we're going to be talking about another fundamental concept for programming and Python: functions. Functions are blocks of code within our program that we can then reuse within our main program. We will define our function outside of our main program, put the code that we want to execute whenever we use that function within that definition, and then within our main program, we will execute that function or call that function, which we will see in a moment here. First, let's start by defining a function, which we do by using the def keyword, def, which is short for define. And let's make a simple function, which is just going to print out a hello message. So we'll give this function a name, and we can give this function any name we want. We'll call it say hello. Then we follow that up with open and close parentheses, and then a colon. And on the next line, indented, is where the code that we want executed whenever we call this function, this is where we're going to put that code. And so anytime we call this say hello function, we want it to print out the message, hello there. But notice, if I run this program right now, nothing happens because this is not part of our main program. This is another function that we have access to now that we can use within our main program, but our main program really starts on line 4 and 5, which is empty. Our program doesn't exist yet, so let's make one. Let's start with just saying print, this is the start of our program. And then right after that, let's call our new function. So we simply write the name of the function, say underscore hello, and then we must use the open and close parentheses to tell Python I want to use this function. The open and close parentheses is what allows that to happen. And if we run this program, notice what happens. It prints out our first print message. That's the start of our program. And then the say hello function is called, but it still prints out hello there. So what's happening is it's calling our say hello function. It looks for the say hello function, which it sees on line 2, and it then executes all of the code within that function, which is all of the code on line 3. And so the hello there is also printed right after that. What's nice is that if we want to repeat ourselves, rather than having to print out the same print statement over and over, we can just call our same function multiple times. And here, rather than having to print each time, we can just call our function, and it's going to get printed 3 times instead. Another way we can use functions is by actually returning something from them. So in this example, we haven't returned anything from the say hello function. So we just call it like we have on line 6, 7, and 8, and then we continue on to the next line. But just like other functions that we've used in the past, if we want to create our own function to save our own variables, we could do that as well using the return keyword. Let's make a new function called add. And here, we're actually going to add some parameters to this function. So we'll have a parameter called A and a parameter called B. And these are just temporary variables that are going to exist within this function. And they're going to represent the two numbers that we want to add together. So what do we want to do when we get those two numbers? We simply want to take whatever that number they pass in for A and add it to whatever number they pass in for B. But in order to get this number back out of this function, we need to use the return keyword. And so now, whatever two numbers we pass in, it's going to add them together and then return it back to us in our main program. What I mean by that is instead of simply saying add, and now I have to pass it two numbers, let's say 5 and 3. Now I've passed in 5, and 5 is going to be the A in this case on line 5, and the 3 is going to be the B on line 5. So on line 6, when it returns A and B, it's going to return 5 plus 3, which is going to give us 8. But now that we're returning it right now, it's just going to be thrown away. We need to put that into a variable. So let's say sum or together is equal to, and now if we print that number, we can see that it prints out the number 8 because it took our 5 and 3, added them together, and returned it back to us, which allowed us to store it into this variable here. And then when we print it out, that's the number that we expected to see. Just remember that the order of these variables are important. So in this case, we're just adding the two numbers together. So if we switch them, not too much is going to be different. But depending on the function, if this was A minus B instead, then the order that we pass these in will very much depend on what answer we get back out. So just keep in mind the order that we define them up here is the order that we need to pass them in when we call our function in our main code. This is the basics of Python functions. For more academic support resources, please read the video's description. Thank you for watching, and we hope to work with you soon.